In order for us to scale out our deployment, what we're going to have to do is add a couple more pieces of devices in order for this to work out. So currently, from a virtual machine count perspective, hosts 1 and 2 are used for compute. Host 1, 2, and 3 are used for compute, and then host 4 is our management device. We have several devices deployed to it and things like that. We have DC1, vCenter 1 deployed, and we have host 2, NSX Manager 1. All of this is in data center 1. This all works out, but in order for us to scale this out, we actually need additional devices added in order for this to work. Now I have ESXi5 here. I'm actually going to get rid of this and redeploy it because it's already got NSX bits installed on it. So the goal is to add, let me go ahead and whiteboard this out too while I'm talking about it, just so everybody understands what I'm going to be doing from a logic perspective. Let me go ahead and switch over to white. So I have host 1, I have host 2, I have host 3, and then I have host 4. These guys are in a cluster. This is in a cluster on its own. We have vCenter deployed as well, and then we have NSX deployed as well, right? So this is making up one data center, right? Well, what we need to do in order for this to work and scale out is we're going to deploy another host 5, and then host 6. And what we're going to do with host 5 and host 6 is we're going to put him in his own cluster, for compute and for management. We're going to deploy another vCenter, and we're going to deploy another NSX. And when we do this, what we're going to end up doing is this vCenter 1, this is vCenter 2. We're going to configure vCenter 2 to join a single sign-on domain of vCenter 1. We're going to configure vCenter 2 to join the existing vCenter domain of vCenter 1. And then that will allow vCenter 1 and vCenter 2 to be manageable from vCenter 1 when we log into it. When you log in and you join an existing single sign-on domain, it makes the scale out much easier. Then what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a second NSX manager, and when we do that, this NSX manager will get pointed to this guy. Once these two are pointed to each other and they're connected, because vCenter 2 will be tied to vCenter 1, and this NSX manager is tied to this guy, when we go underneath the NSX control of vCenter server, we're actually going to see two managers. We'll see one, and we're going to see two. So this is one, this will be two. And what that will allow us to do is scale out. So we'll then be able to deploy IPsec, whoops, that's supposed to be a C, IPsec VPN. We'll be able to do layer 2 VPN, so on and so forth. And that really is the goal of us deploying this whole solution. We're going to go through and get this squared away. These guys right here, host 5 and host 6, will be pretty easy to roll out. vCenter 2 is going to take a little bit of time, so will NSX Manager. But as you can see right here, we've deployed one vCenter here and one NSX Manager here already. And they go in pretty quickly. So the first thing we're going to have to do is go in, and I'm actually going to do, in the order that we're going to do, it's going to be, the first will be vCenter 2, so VC2 will get deployed. The second will be host 5 and host 6. The third will be NSX2. When we deploy vCenter 2, we will integrate him with vCenter 1. vCenter 1 is already integrated, and I'm just going to draw a bidirectional arrow there, with NSX 1. And then we're going to join NSX2 to vCenter 2. vCenter 2, because it'll be connected to vCenter 1, we'll start to see everything show up inside of vCenter 1. We'll see a second and a second NSX manager, and then we'll worry about getting the primary and secondary roles squared away and all that good stuff that goes along with it. So that's basically what we're going to go do. We won't be able to do universal logical switches or UDLRs on this topology. I will actually be switching over to and rebuilding the environment from the ground up for universal deployment, because right now I'm on the shared storage that I would need in order for this to work. I don't have currently deployed. So meaning that I would need, say, DC1 SAN would be also able to be used for DC2. So you could, because it's a lab, I'd actually be able to hook the SAN into both data centers and then have replication going back and forth, so I can move, say, VM1 from data center 1 to data center 2 this way, and what they call cross vCenter vMotion. That is a real thing, and that's one of the things that NSX is well known for. So that's one of the ways that you accomplish that. Now there are other ways of doing it. There is a technique known as SRM, Site Recovery Manager, as well as replication. And to deploy those, I actually would have to test them out and make sure that they're working the way that they need to be. I have yet to get either one of those working, but that is a goal of mine in the very short, narrow future, in the very future, and then I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but it'll not in the distant future, but it'll be in the short-term future. Something I'm gonna be testing out here very, very soon. So that's basically what we're going to go ahead and do and get that all squared away. Let me go ahead and clear the screen, and we're going to go ahead and start off with a secondary deployment. We're going to deploy a vCenter server here. So to do that, I'm going to create a virtual machine, deploy an OVA, click on next. We're going to go ahead and select the OVA that we're going to go deploy. And I am going to call that from how did I deploy that before? So we'll go ahead and do, I'm going to say DC2-VCSA1. Next, we're going to go put it on the QNAP. We're going to go ahead and agree to the licensing file, agree to that. Click next. The VM network, that's fine. If it gets tiny vCenter with embedded PSC, 2 CPUs, thin provisioning, power on automatically. Next. Networking, we're going to go ahead and the IP address for this guy, we will point to, I have to go see what we're going to use for that because I hadn't actually laid that out yet. But essentially what we're going to be using is, whoops, and then we got .20, we'll do 30 and 31 is what I'll use. Get that done. So this will be 10.0.0.30. Actually, you know what? No, I can deploy it. Actually, never mind. Let me cancel this. So there's an easier way of deploying this, and it'll be through this way here. I forgot that I deployed it from this box. So if I open up the local storage and go to Documents, I actually have it sitting right here. So I will go ahead and deploy it through this guy, and I'll point it to the server that I'm working with. We'll go ahead and push that box out and get this all squared away. This part right here I think is necessary for you guys to see because it's scaling out something you probably have not seen before. So I'm going to go ahead and install a new vCenter Server Appliance. Click Next. We're going to accept the terms. It'll be embedded. We're going to say 10.255.1.101. That'll be root and then the password. Click Next. Yes, we're going to deploy it that way. we're going to go ahead and say this will be dc2-vcsa1. Specify the password. Click next. The deployment size will be tiny. And then we'll click next on that. We're going to put it in the QNAP thin provisioned. Click next. Put it in VM network. Actually, I'm going to put this in lab trunk. We're going to go ahead and specify dc2-vcsa1.lab.local. The IP address here will be 10.0.0.30/24 mask 10.0.0.1. DNS server will be 10.0.0.254. And then click on next and then finish. What I'm going to go do is immediately come over here and add a couple of entries to my host record. So I'm going to type in here dc2-vcsa1. This will be 10.0.0.30. And then I'm also going to add in dc2-NSXmgr. I believe it's 1. Yep, 1. And this one here will be 10.0.0.31. And then click on add host. I don't need to worry about much more than that. So we're just going to basically go into a hurry up and wait state as this particular deployment is finished being done. I will pause until this is fully rolled out, but then I'm going to have to show you guys how to join the existing SSO domain and go from there. Alright, so the deployment went really well. As we can see, it was successfully deployed. Next thing we're going to go ahead and click on is continue, and that will actually redirect us. It's actually going to go log into the console so that we can finish the deployment. And this is where we're actually going to join the vCenter server that's already deployed. Click next. And we'll enable SSH access just because we can. Click on next. Now typically speaking, you'll just create a new SSO domain and be on your way. The problem with that though is it's two separate single sign-on domains. Now if you aren't comfortable with joining an existing SSO domain, you can configure a single sign-on domain here and create a new one, and then you can actually repoint down the road later on. And it just takes a little bit of time for it to redirect and things like that. There's a couple of command line options you have to do. I'm going to go ahead and just bypass that process right now, and I'm going to put in here dc1-vcsa1.lab.local, and it's going to be, the domain is going to be vsphere.local with the password being password that we've been using. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. It's going to go try to connect to it, validating time, and we should be in good shape. Now what this means is once we get done doing this, let's go ahead and finish up these last few pieces where it's basically saying once you start you can't stop, no problem. Once this is finished building, when we log into vCenter again, we'll actually see a second vCenter server show up. We'll see dc2 vcsa1, which would be the second data center. Once that's in play, then we'll be able to join or deploy a second NSX manager and then add our ESXi host and all that good stuff that goes along with it. So I'm going to pause until this is complete and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, good stuff. So the appliance is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click on close, and because I did this, it's automatically going to launch the deployment here. I'm actually going to go back over here and log in, and if everything has been set up correctly, I probably will see the second vCenter show up as soon as I log in. We'll give this a minute or two to do its thing, and I have to actually jump out to hosting clusters. And guess what I see? I see a second vCenter server down here deployed. Alright, so that's the first piece. We went ahead and I deployed a second vCenter server and integrated it with SSO into our existing deployment. The next thing I will go do is deploy a second NSX manager to my ESXi host and get that squared away. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I'll catch everybody in the next video.